What if I told you that the wide receiver with 5 straight 1,000-yard seasons is going in round 4, and no one seems to care? Not because he's lost a step, not because he's done, but because we're all afraid to trust Devonte Adams right before he breaks fantasy again. Because the ecosystem is screaming yes. That's what he played 81% of the time last year, and the Rams have been ranked among the top 3 teams in wide receiver target share in 3 of the past 4 seasons, and top 5 in wide receiver fantasy points in 6 of the last 8. That's a red carpet for wideouts, and somehow I'm still hesitating. Adams' target rate dipped to 27.7% last year. Pretty good, but not his old nuclear self. And he's walking in as the clear number 2 behind Puka. If this offense really funnels to 1 alpha, how high can the second guy actually climb? And the Stafford years don't really calm me down. The second highest TD totals in his 4 Rams seasons, 6, 3, 5, 6. That means that 1 player is typically soaking things up. Puka, at least for this year's purposes. The rest is basically fighting for scraps. And that sounds like a cap that I just can't hand wave on this one. But then I swing back. Devonte scored 8 or more touchdowns in every season since 2019, and the Rams just vacated 12 end zone targets with DeMarcus Robinson gone. The red zone path is right there, and yet that Stafford trend keeps tapping the brakes. So I'm stuck between a wide receiver friendly system and a wide receiver 2 label, between a touchdown resume and a 4-year wide receiver 2 touchdown drought, between a clean round 4 price tag and a profile that quietly slipped, just enough to make me wonder if my confidence is discipline or if it's fear. I can't get past the scoring profile. On paper, it's strong. Number 3 in red zone targets last year, a top tier ability to win in tight coverage, the vacated end zone looks that are just sitting there. And we've seen time and time again those releases off the line of scrimmage that him and Rodgers did so well for so long. But Stafford's history in LA keeps tripping me up. In those 4 seasons, that wide receiver 2 just hasn't had the massive ceiling that we're gonna need at this price tag. Was it because they just didn't have it on their team? I don't know. Cooper Kupp was pretty good. Or is it really just how this offense wants to operate? 1 player eats, everyone else scraps. Adams' resume says that he can probably be that exception, but you're basically betting on him to break a system and a trend that's held for 4 straight years. You could probably make an argument that that would have been different if Cooper Kupp would have been healthy the entire time, but I digress. But then I circle back to usage. Running backs in McVay's offense have finished in the bottom 2 for target share in 4 of the past 6 years. The ball goes to wideouts here, but Puka isn't entrenched as the main guy, and last year Adams' route win rate was 47%. Good enough to earn work, but not good enough to push to alpha status. That's a very different picture than just looking at target totals. It's not about raw volume, it's about leverage in the route tree. Then I flip over because even with that win rate, he still caught 43.5% of contested targets and was a top option in the red zone areas. But then there's the 66% catchable target rate. That was number 75 in the NFL with the target quality rating of 4.72, which was the 71st best. So yeah, it wasn't a clean runway for efficiency last year on his 2 teams. So I'm not sure if it was the environment that taxed those numbers or if it was the first crack in what might be the downfall of Devonte Adams, but I don't think we're there yet. Because then I remember his role actually shifted. A career high 43.9% of his snaps came from the slot last year. That's the inside-out flexibility that McVay leans on, and it opens up the full route tree if the infrastructure holds. But Stafford came into camp unable to practice with that back soreness, and his blind side, DJ Humphries, a 10-year vet, is coming off an ACL tear. So that's a risky combination when your fantasy bet is built on concentrated, high-value volume. If either of those cracks, the whole funnel changes. The thing that finally got me was realizing that he didn't underperform because he fell off. He underperformed because the targets he got were trash. Last year, he was number 3 in expected fantasy points per game and still came in quite a ways under that. Then you look at the input, 66% catchable targets, that was number 75 in the NFL. That's not a Devonte problem, that's environment tax. So here's where it flipped for me. Round 4 already prices in that wide receiver 2 label, the efficiency concerns, and also the offensive line worries. But what it doesn't price in is the thing that McVay actually does. He funnels away from running backs. Year after year, he does the same thing. So the risk that everyone's bracing for is already priced in. But what we're not talking about enough is what if he snaps back? What if that ceiling cap that we've been scared of starts to look like a mirage and he really just needed a better situation? So that's when it hit me. Maybe it's not about him proving he's a top 5 player again. Maybe it's still us anchored to last year's noise when the price has already moved. If the market is basically priced him at his floor, then what exactly are we afraid of? You can run the numbers, you can circle the risk, but here's the truth. Round 4 is the cheapest Devonte Adams has been in years, and the ceiling hasn't moved. The floor is already priced in. The upside could win you your league. That's it. That's the bet. And I'll take it because we forgot. This guy's still Devonte Adams. And players you can trust for a massive ceiling at that price, they can win you titles. But real quick, if you're serious about actually beating your friends this year, go to fantasyaccelerator.com or hit the first link below. You'll get instant access to my 2025 draft kit, rankings, sleepers, busts, cheat sheets, the same system over 12,000 players used last year to dominate drafts and steamroll their league. But here's the deal, I'm keeping it limited so that the real ones inside actually get my full attention. You'll see on the next page how many spots are left, but when it's full, that's it. And the price is going up later this month no matter what, so now's the time to lock in. Everyone saw what Drake London did with Michael Penix last year, but no one's drafting him like it mattered. 13 targets, 18 targets, 22 catches. That stretch alone made him the wide receiver 6 overall, and he did it with a rookie, a new system, and a role that he had never had before. So if that was the starting point, I have all I need to bet on him in 2025. He's going at the 2.8 overall second round tax for a wideout that you're supposed to trust. And the profile looks like it should be automatic. 3rd in targets, 100 catches, got that alpha usage, but the part I can't shake is this, it only felt inevitable after the quarterback change, and the sample was tiny. With Penix, London didn't just get targets, he was the first read. 39% target share, 3.74 yards per route run. Targeted on 41% of his routes. That's not chemistry, that's a quarterback picking a side, but it's also just 3 games, so that's where my brain stalls. The system is trying to make it easy on him too. 52.7% were off the line, 38.9% in the slot. It's kind of like that Rams-style target share, that target tree that we were just talking about. It basically just creates layups all over the field, so part of me thinks I'm just overthinking it, and that I should really stop because they've built him a runway. But the macro doesn't fight that story. Neutral lean pass, up-tempo, top 5 in combined snaps and points, plus one of the easiest passing schedules in the entire league. Everything around him is pointing in the same direction. Volume. So why am I hesitating? Because last year there was still a large stretch where it didn't go that well, where he was a little bit scary at his draft price. The red zone piece doesn't make me feel great either. He finished tied for the 3rd most red zone targets. That should scream safety, yet we still had kind of like a B grade season outside of that late season stretch. So how do I draft that roller coaster at the 208 and call it trust? The truth is I'm stuck between Penix keeps force feeding him, or maybe it was just 3 games that fooled us. Those are the 2 scenarios. So that's the knot that I'm trying to untie here. With Cousins, London was fine. 24.6% target share, about 65 yards a game, 2.24 yards per route run. But with Penix, everything tilted. 39% target share, over 115 yards per game, and a 3.74 yards per route run. That's not incremental. That's a different offense built around the same player. And yeah, it was just 3 games, but 3 games happened to be the 3 last ones that we saw, which makes me wonder if I'm seeing the future or if it was just a highlight reel. London isn't just living off of usage. He was 3rd in target rate per route and one of the best press beaters in football, 78.8% success rate. Shout out to Matt Harmon, his reception perception. So those traits travel no matter who's throwing. And part of me thinks if the routes and leverage and wins are already this clean, maybe Penix doesn't have to be perfect. But then I circle back. All that skill needs the quarterback to keep hitting those spots that made the last 3 games pop. His role was locked and the offense kept him heavily involved. The role and both the skill say that he's maybe a dark horse wide receiver 1 overall, if we're honest with ourselves and things break perfectly. You can actually make an argument for regression here. 19.9 expected PPR points last year, yet only had 16.5 on average. That gap should mean that the production could catch up. We just need a little bit more consistency. He had just 58% of his games last year in double-digit fantasy points. If the QB slips even more towards that average, the gap doesn't close, it probably widens. And we're definitely going to need him to be more consistent in this range. Have you guys been following along in camp though? The ball keeps finding him. I feel like every time I go on Twitter, I see another highlight reel catch from him and Penix. I want to call that a confirmation, but there's been times I've been fooled this time of year, leaning too heavily into something that ended the season that was more of a mirage than anything. The setup honestly couldn't be more inviting. It's one of the most concentrated usage trees in the league, built to keep the volume narrow. Everything shows that I should be bullish here, except the voice in my head keeps reminding me that I might be buying just those 3 games. The thing that finally got me wasn't another split, it was realizing that the environment is already locked in. Atlanta plays fast, 4th in neutral pace, 59% of those plays are passes. Like I just said, they run one of the more concentrated usage trees in the league and draw the 6th easiest passing schedule in the NFL. That's a machine that creates more plays and more throws and funnels them to one guy. That's what cracked it open for me. I'm not betting on a rookie to stay hot. I'm betting on structure, pace, pass rate, that narrow target tree to reproduce what I already saw. Those 3 games didn't invent Drake London. They just showed what the offense could look like when the read is clean. If that's the setup, the season doesn't need a miracle. It just needs the system that we already have. London lived at that 29% target rate across the entire year. The preview at the end was clearly context catching up to the role. That was the flip for me. It was more clarity, not certainty, but enough to stop me treating December like a mirage. At the start, the question was, what if I'm buying the wrong 3 games? Now, that's kind of gone. The role is locked, the scheme hits, and the volume is as safe as it gets at wide receiver. You don't pass on that at the 2-8. You draft it, you build around it, and you let everyone else second guess. I'm not hoping Drake London is a league winner. I'm drafting him knowing that he will be. But if you're not ready for the full draft kit yet, you can still get my top 150 rankings totally free at top150free.com. It's the exact list that I'm using in every draft this year, and odds are at least one of your league mates already has it, but if they do and you don't, you're gonna feel it by round 3. So grab yours now. It takes 30 seconds. It might save your whole draft. I used to get cute with Devonta Smith. I saw the guy behind A.J. Brown, not the one quietly dropping 14 points a game. He finished as the wide receiver 14, 15, and wide receiver 20 the last 3 years, but somehow I always seem to hesitate on draft day. The volume's streaky, and the team barely throws. And the worst part is, I know exactly how this ends. He goes in the 5th, some other team takes him, and he wins them weeks while I'm watching. I'm not letting that happen again. He's going in the mid-5th, right in the pocket with guys like Jameson Williams, those true ceiling profiles people chase when they want to feel smart. And that's what makes this one tricky. The price feels fair, but the second A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert are both healthy, the scoring swings pretty hard. The splits aren't great, and I can't shake how hard some of those swings can be when I really need them. And last year's offense didn't exactly feed the wide receiver room. They threw on just 41.9% of plays. That's the kind of script that forces even a top 20 point per game receiver to live off of scraps. History says they don't always stay this run heavy. Since 2011, teams that dip under 45% often come back toward balance, even when the schedule gets a little bit more competitive. Except the high water mark for slot usage last year, more inside snaps, more press looks, more free releases, that one was a Kellen Moore tweak, and Moore's gone. Kevin Patullo's a continuity hire, but if that development forces Devonta more towards his only outside usage, those easy wins at the line of scrimmage could vanish quickly. So the macro pulls me both ways. It's an offensive line built to run. They have the 8th easiest rushing schedule this year, and a pass game that's built to go through 3 players only. So August didn't really help with this indecision. That back flare up cost him 4 practices on its own, whatever. It's just one more line on a page that already has ankle, concussion, hamstring, wrist. This guy's been banged up quite a bit. I don't hear many people talk about that. So here I am, mid-5th, for a player who's been top 20 in points per game 3 straight seasons and signed an offense that dares me to call that safety real. So am I paying for the floor that I trust or the ceiling that I still haven't seen in a while? So I keep going back to that split. 8 full games with both A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert active. Smith's scoring pace dropped to the wide receiver 51 per game. With one of them out, wide receiver 8. It's not noise. That was half of his season. I can't decide if that's volatility that you want to live with or if it's proof that the floor only exists when someone else disappears. But then there's the counterpunch, 3 straight years top 20 in points per game. Inside an offense that was dead last in second half dropbacks last year. So if you can hold that floor in that environment, is that safety or is it just survival? The macro to me keeps whispering bounce back. If the pass rate ticks up, those extra throws don't scatter. Every other Eagles pass catcher outside of Brown, Smith, and Goedert sat under 11 targets per route. The ball stays in the funnel. And then there's the Kellen Moore wrinkle here. Last year, he kicked Devonta inside, which was 46% of his snaps. A career high, so his life got a lot easier. Fewer press looks, more clean releases. But even without it, he's winning 80% versus press, 78.3% versus man, 81.5% versus zone. Again, shout out Matt Harmon reception perception, guy's a legend. The slot did make it easier, it didn't make it possible. Still, the targets have been dropping, 136 to 112 to 89 over the last 3 years. If that inside usage slides back and the decline continues, what's left? Even that August all good moment came with a seed of doubt when his back tightened up. Those 4 missed practices this time of the year definitely made my ears perk up. But he did have a full return, so on its own, whatever. I'm gonna try and get over that. But all of these loops kind of have a counterpunch. That's what scares me a little bit. Every number that excites me kind of comes with a catch. So the distribution is really what I want to focus on here. It really was just a 3-man target tree. So if those extra throws, if they pass a little bit more this year, continue to funnel to 3 guys, they could all be undervalued in fantasy. Or if they land on the same set of hands, maybe someone like Devonta Smith, you have a must-draft player that you're going to regret not taking. That's kind of where I'm at. It's a bet that I'm willing to make. And the other thing that I've been thinking about was I keep treating that heavy slot usage from last year like a crutch until I looked at how he actually wins. He's basically elite against any type of coverage. The slot stuff made it easier, but it didn't make it possible. So when I look back at those 2 issues, the whole picture kind of shifts for me. That's when it hit me. I've been looking at the wrong things. He's been a lot more consistent than most people realize. Top 20 in points per game in 3 straight years? You don't find those type of players in this area of your draft. So the answer has been been sitting here the whole time. So I'm done pretending that I don't see it. I used to overthink it with this guy. Now it's simple. He has the cleanest funnel in football, a skill set that wins no matter where he lines up. That's not a debate. That's an auto pick. So if he's there, I'm taking him. And if you're serious about winning, you probably should too. So Devonta finally got me to stop overcomplicating it. And then the next situation reminded me how much damage bad quarterback play can do, even when everything else is built right. We keep drafting like last year was Calvin Ridley's fault. He had 120 catches and 71 of them weren't even catchable. That should have buried him, but he still cleared 1,000 yards and led the entire league in air yards. Now they're moving him around, putting him in motion, dialing up screens, the stuff he barely got at all last year. And when they go deep, Cam Ward can actually put the ball where it needs to be. So round 6 is straight up disrespectful. Sometimes you can even get him in round 7, like around wide receiver 32. And I still can't decide if it's a clearance rack steal or a trap that I've walked into before. The role's locked in. There isn't a single receiver or tight end on this roster who can realistically seal it. He's gonna end up somewhere around 112 to 127 targets, which should make this easy, but it doesn't. Because last year is still stuck in my head. He finished as wide receiver 30, and I can't shake the feeling that the market is still pricing in that bruise. Some see Ridley as a streamer until Ward proves it. Others think that wide receiver 1 role alone makes the price completely wrong. I get both, which is why I'm kind of stuck here. The volume and role are baked in, but the quarterback is a little bit of a variable and still loud enough to spook most of the draft room. So round 6 feels right, but why does it feel like we're still paying for last year instead of this year? After he already proved it, the ability to win targets and valuable ones downfield. I keep thinking about the games where he did everything right and still walked away empty. Like the one where we saw him get 8 targets and not one of them turned into a catch. Not because the corner erased him, he was open, the ball just died before it ever got there. That's how you end your season with a catchable target rate under 60%. 97th in the league. You don't survive that type of quarterback play, and somehow he still went over 1,000 yards. So even in that chaos, he was the wide receiver 15 in target share, ran one of the deepest route trees in the league with a 15.7 ADOT. He had 32 deep targets last year, which was the 3rd highest in the NFL. I think one of the craziest things is he went over 1,000 yards, but still went over 1,000 unrealized air yards. I love that stat. That's 1,000 yards of offense that just never landed. And this year they're trying to flip that. The offense is going to look a lot different in general. They're building a bit more of a quicker passing game, giving Ridley some of those short setups that he never saw last year. So it's the kind of shift that can change a season if it holds. They've even paired him with a rookie QB who fits his game a lot better. Extra routes after practice, more reps in camp, like they're building chemistry early. So that should be the turning point, getting more of these 12 to 18 yard shots where he's just schemed open. But rookie QBs, man, they just have a way of dragging everything down. Efficiency, volume, that whole offensive rhythm. The offense is projected to run about 61 plays per game at a 60% pass rate, both above average. But a lot of that does depend on how well Cam Ward actually does adapt to the NFL game. So I started digging into some of the micro numbers just because this one just doesn't make a lot of sense to me where he's being drafted. So I must be missing something, right? His yards per route run, 1.89. That's fine, nothing special. Expected fantasy points per game last year, 28th overall. So the usage says that he should have done more. He struggled a bit in press coverage, so it's either the profile of a guy that's about to pop or that same middle of the pack season that's dressed up a bit just because he got those deep targets. So I've been here before. I've talked myself into the role, the usage, the this time is different logic. And every time I reach this point, I can't tell if I'm looking at a breakout or the exact stat line that I've already lived through. The thing that finally flipped it for me wasn't a projection. It wasn't even a number that I hadn't seen before. It was just seeing 2 notes side by side. The contested catch rate was actually phenomenal last year. So the catchable targets, 81% of the time he came down with it. That was a career high. That's how he did it. That's how he locked in 1,000 yards last year in complete chaos. So if he can level up a little bit this year and get some better volume, like what happens if some of these throws are on time? I'll tell you what happens. He's not a 6th rounder. So that's the exact moment that it stopped being complicated and I decided to just be honest with myself. We didn't reprioritize the player, we repriced him from last year. Last year he was going in the 3rd round, now it's the 6th round. So I think we might have just overcorrected here. This is like the classic post-hype sleeper. Nothing about the role got smaller. They literally engineered more free targets. These shorter throws, these layup touches that he never got last year. So maybe this isn't Ridley proving he's something new. Maybe it's me finally accepting that he already adjusted to the worst part and the environment is what's changed. So I don't know if that makes him a league winner, but for the first time, this whole thing has felt clear. And I think it's because we basically went through every level of it. And there's really one scenario that makes sense. Because we keep drafting him like last year was his fault. I'm I'm done doing that. He's already proved that he can survive the worst quarterback play in the league. He's already proved the floor. Now he gets the volume, the fit, and the offense that he's never had. So round 6 isn't just disrespectful, it's a gift, and I'm taking it every single time. Ridley's case was about repricing that bruise, but the next one isn't about scars. It's about what happens when you finally drop a volatile skill set into one of the fastest, high-leverage passing games in football. I don't even flinch when I see George Pickens at pick 67. Not anymore. I used to talk myself out of it, too boom or bust. But now he's got Dak Prescott, something to prove, and a top 3 wideout drawing double coverage every snap. You give that guy 120 targets in the NFL's fastest-paced offense, I'm betting my house on what happens next. So he's sitting there at pick 67, wide receiver 30 off the board, and it's not a simple yes for most people. I get it, he just left a Pittsburgh offense that averaged around 472 targeted attempts for one that sat around 612 the last 2 seasons. That's 100 plus more chances to catch passes, and Dak's the best quarterback he's ever played with. But in Pittsburgh, he owned a 27% target share. In Dallas, CeeDee Lamb has swallowed over 32% of the targets when on the field. Last year, he had 73 more looks than any other wide receiver on the team. But the Cowboys talk about him like he's on track to fix everything that they lacked. He has uncanny ball tracking ability and has the explosive plays that they never found in 2024. But it's still Brian Schottenheimer calling the plays, and this year they draw the 6th toughest passing schedule in football. So at pick 67, am I drafting a wide receiver 2 with wide receiver 1 weeks baked in, or a field stretching wide receiver 3 whose new zip code makes the spikes louder? The thing I can't shake is how different this role could look. Last year his yards per route run was 2.15, top 30 among wideouts, even with Pittsburgh sitting bottom tier in dropbacks. Now he's in one of the league's fastest paced offenses, but the red zone work still tilts heavily towards CeeDee Lamb. Pickens was a man coverage beater last year, we know that, but he really struggled against zone. So I'm a little bit more nervous about this tough passing schedule that the Cowboys have, because it's littered with zone-heavy defenses. It's just a little bit more difficult to picture those drive-swinging deep shots coming every week when the coverage is built to smother them. But this Dallas offense plays fast, and the offense is condensed around just a few weapons, so that should mean at least steady looks from a better quarterback. He was seeing about 29% of his targets against man last year, only 22% of those against zone, so that's the split that we're going to have to battle all year long, in a division that likes to play a lot of zone. So do those extra plays really find him, or does that just mean more CeeDee Lamb, more Ferguson? You know the drill. It's pretty crazy because his upside scenario is so massive that it makes me want to take him in every draft. Like, he legit does have wide receiver 1 overall status in his repertoire. At the very least, he has top 20 wide receiver written all over him. But there doesn't seem to be a lot of consensus in the fantasy community. It looks like a lot of people have him either way too high or way too low. He seems to be like one of the more polarizing players in fantasy drafts right now. But I think what finally broke that limiting belief for me was realizing that his ceiling doesn't hinge on taking work away from CeeDee. It hinges on Dak doing what his old quarterbacks never could. Last year, only 67% of his targets were catchable. That's 71st among wideouts, and he still finished 2nd in the league with downfield yards. Now those same routes are coming from a quarterback who's got a top 4 passer rating on throws of 20 plus yards downfield, and Pickens is winning 44.8% of his contested targets when he does get down there. So that's the moment it stopped getting complicated. That's the one thing that has to go right, because his big weeks were never built on double-digit targets. They were built on 2 or 3 game-breaking plays. I think it was like week 6 or week 7 last year. He had 5 targets for 111 yards and a touchdown. That's not volume, that's like a couple of perfect balls in the perfect spot. I think what people don't realize is this offense is built for 2 wide receivers to emerge, or at least 2 red zone weapons to emerge. So maybe what we have to worry about is Pickens just overshadowing Ferguson. I could live with that. I think we just have to stop thinking about whether he can out-earn CeeDee Lamb. That's never going to happen, and start thinking about what happens if those 2 or 3 perfect throws every week are 30 yards over the top, or if there's 6 points in the red zone, because Pickens can win on either of those situations. So honestly, there's no safer bet at this price. Pickens wins where it matters with a quarterback who can cash every one of those wins into points. I don't think the quiet weeks are going to matter much, because the big ones will win your matchup before the afternoon games even start. So if you want upside you can trust, draft George Pickens and thank me in December.